Hey crew, it's Ben, and I'm back with another MBTI video. Today we are going to be checking out Mayim Bialik. Uh, she is an actress, a scientist, a very accomplished woman, and we're going to take a little peek into her mind and try and see if we can type her. Now, standard disclaimer, I am not a doctor. I'm just a guy who spent an awful lot of time learning a system to try and understand myself better. And now that I understand myself a little bit, I'm trying to help you understand yourself a little bit. And we do that by exploring the mind. I use the MBTI system, but I have changed it a little bit. Most of the terms should be kind of familiar to you, but the way that I do it is different than anything else on the internet. And so we're going to go ahead and transition over. We'll look at this. What I do is I look for you are either focused on things or ideas, one or the other. It is either actual things or it is ideas. You either gather or organize. You either get new ones or you sort old ones. You do that either for yourself or for the tribe. You are either a movement person or a control person, which means you're either flexible around ideas or you're rigidly in place on your ideas. You're either direct or informative. You get to the point in as few words as possible, or you use circular arguments and circular reasoning to over-explain things and to chase rabbit holes in conversations. And that is the five coins that I use. You are one or the other of those things. Primarily, everybody can do everything, but primarily you fall into these categories. And through that, we can understand just a little bit more of how you process information. That's all we're doing here. So we're going to go ahead and dive in. This interview is not very old. It's from May of last year. And we're going to just see what she has to say. We're going to look for examples. Let's go.
As somebody who's done so much throughout their
Also, I fast forwarded about 15 minutes in. The first 15 minutes of this interview was dealing with controversial issues that YouTube would take me down for. So we're not going to talk about those. We're going to talk about her and her. This is, according to the timestamp, this is her decision to leave academia and raise her children. So let's see what she's got to say.
career in so many different avenues. I mean, you're an actress.
It doesn't really matter what the topic is. The overall themes come through regardless.
You have a PhD. You've done a lot. You're a mom of two. Where along the journey did you have kids? And then how did you manage to be so attached to them and still be so productive and continue on all these different things that you were doing?
So the answer is I actually didn't get to do all those things. I had my first son in graduate school. I had finished my course curriculum, which meant that I was in data analysis and writing phase. So I was able to write my thesis, essentially laying down while breastfeeding. But my first son was born in grad school. I filed my thesis, defended my thesis, and then took my doctoral hood about 7 months pregnant.
That is listing things right off the top. That is listing things.
With my second, and I was home. I was home with both of my children.
With the first child, blah, blah, blah. With the second child, blah, blah, blah. That's 2 lists in 1 minute.
I left academia. I did not pursue a postdoc. I made a very difficult decision, which may not be the right decision for everyone, but it was the decision for me. And I was the primary caregiver for the first 2 years of my older son's life. And then the first year, and then, kind of on and off as I started working again for his second year. So, there's a tremendous amount of sacrifice involved with being a parent at all, no matter how you do it. But for me, I did make the decision to leave academia so that I could be physically with my kids. And I did go, I sometimes taught with a child strapped to my chest. I tutored piano and Hebrew, and I designed a neuroscience curriculum for junior high and high schoolers in our homeschool community. I did all of that.
That's again listing the sensory. These are things that I have done. This isn't ideas that I'm pursuing. This is not ideas that others are bringing me. This is something that I have done. And yes, they're talking about the past, but that's where she's bringing it.
while being the primary caregiver. Also, my kids didn't eat solids or even drink water until their second year. So I was physically the sustenance for each of my children exclusively for the first year. So, and we didn't use bottles with our first son at all. So, yeah, it's a very physically attached existence.
And was that hard for you in the beginning, at least, being somebody who's such a go-getter and, you've done so much by that point in your career and for your age to, slow down? Not obviously a mother is super busy, but in a different way. Was that hard for you?
It was, I know that it's harder for other people than it was for me.
That is flexibility. That right there is very movement. Whenever you take the question and you compare it to other people and say that I know that people are, or I can understand how people do, like that right there is a flexibility statement. That is somebody flexing around an idea.
Because I already knew that growing a human and then birthing a human was not going to be the same life that I had before. And one of the reasons that, I am such a believer in natural birth and, home birth and things like that, is it does force a preparation and a consciousness on you that already indicates that it's time to shift into a different phase of life. And I'm 45, and I know that especially for young moms today, the notion of like my life has to change can feel very oppressive.
Again, with the flexibility. And that's also some tribe lookout right there. I know for these young ladies that it can seem is very tribe and very movement.
And this is why many people choose not to have children because it's not the same as not having children. So for me, I was really blessed with, a mother who valued both her feminism and her career, but also really valued being a mom and a homemaker. So I was raised with a real reverence for that. And our culture does not really have a reverence for that. And you can see that reflected in maternity leave and paternity leave and the way we, lack.
I'm also getting an informative vibe. Like she seems to be going off on a few rabbit holes here. Not necessarily like way off, but definitely more than is necessary to explain the point.
The way many families lack protection to build a family when a baby is born. Many Northern European countries are really ahead of the curve in this, in terms of understanding that having a baby it's a shift in life for the entire family. And, having a government that supports that is really, really important. So for me, I kind of was preparing for that. And again, in the natural birth and home birth and midwifery communities, that is something that you're kind of trained for. That kind of preparation, especially as you prepare your body and your mind, to manage labor without drugs.
And as a celebrity and somebody in the spotlight with young children,
That was a lot of gathering ideas right there too. Let's go back just a bit. Like
Really, really important. So for me, I kind of was preparing for that. And again, in the natural birth and home birth and midwifery communities,
but it is.
that is something that you're kind of trained for. That kind of preparation, especially as you prepare your body
That's using the possibilities as support for the sensor.
and your mind, to manage labor without drugs.
and as a celebrity and somebody in the spotlight with young children, how did you navigate that whole world? People probably would, want to see your young children and take photographs of you guys. And how did you go about navigating that, especially as somebody who thought differently, more alternatively?
Yeah.
How did you shelter your family from that at that time?
Well, I mean, keep in mind, I wasn't that famous then. I had been on Blossom and I took 12 years off. So, in many ways, I was just a normal,
Don't forget the sensory.
frumpy, frumpy mom. When my older son was born, we didn't even have smartphones. I didn't even have a laptop. Like no one did. I mean, sorry, fancy like computery people did, but like your average person, like we didn't have any of that stuff. So there was
It's hard for this younger generation to remember that. But like I remember when cell phones were not a thing that anybody really had. And I remember when they started being.
no notion of like internet, like paparazzi weren't following. That wasn't my life. I was out of the spotlight. That's kind of why I left the industry because I like being out of the spotlight. And then I went back to work on Big Bang Theory when my younger son was about a year and a half, and I was made a regular around when he was 2.
That again is listing the events. Like she's very much listing events as time references, and that is an organized things. Like when my son was this age, I did this, and when my son was this age, I did that. Is a very tribe focused time orientation, and the time orientation is storing the sensory, right? So that is very much given me a organized things. We're getting very much tribe. We're getting a good bit of movement, and we're going to look for some confirmation on direct and informative real quick.
So yeah, I never kind of had that level of fame that Jim Parsons had, or it was never really like that. And I'm very grateful, honestly, that my kids are older now because it is very hard, to be in the spotlight when your parent is, when you're young.
And given that your kids are still relatively young, how do you go about guarding them or protecting them from, going online and using Google or social media and, being somebody out there, a public figure and a celebrity, people are going to say good and bad. Do you worry about that and what your kids are going to come across when they're
I
online?
do. Yeah, I mean, my older son has a phone, and I would say while my children aren't perfect, and I'm sure, we will have, we will have conflict. They're not angels or saints. We have raised them with a very, I don't want to say aggressive, but we've raised them with a very specific notion of the internet and access to information.
We've listed this sensory.
Not specifically around me, but really in general. It was actually my older son who told me that he was hearing people talk about that I should host Jeopardy. And that's actually how I called my agent and said, my older son saw on the internet that I should host Jeopardy. So should I host
It's interesting how
Jeopardy? Maybe we should make a call about that. But yeah, that kind of stuff does worry me. And, I'm grateful there's no naked pictures of me on the internet, which, not that there's anything wrong if you want to take naked pictures, but for me, I'm glad that like that's not something
that's not a sensory that I partake.
I have to worry about them
She got very, very uncomfortable about that.
seeing. So yeah, I mean, we teach them to take everything with a grain of salt, and I think they're the meanest to me of anyone. So,
Are they into Big Bang Theory? Did they give you props for that?
no, we didn't have them. They didn't watch Big Bang Theory. We're not really a TV watching family, so they actually hadn't seen it. Um, they just had never watched a sitcom. We're just really not TV people like that. So they saw some episodes because they would come visit me at work. But no, they're not really TV watchers. It's kind of funny. I know their friends are, my older son in particular.
Well, I've heard you even say
She's coming off across more and more as direct. I think that what I saw as possible informative before was just her expounding on the story to help fill time. They do that in the interviews. That's something you have to watch out for in interviews, especially the ones that are structured like this.
you're not a fan of watching your work afterwards, which I find so hard to believe. You put all this time in and you're on this popular TV show, Big Bang Theory. I mean, how do you not get peaked to see, what's making the final cut and how that turns out?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, some people do watch themselves. My feeling is like my job is not to watch myself. My job is to, say my lines and hit my mark, and make you feel something, make you believe something, entertain you. But no, beyond that, it's really for me only frustrating to see what got left out, and what, I could have looked different, and why does my hair look like that, and
She, again, with the sensory, she's very much sensory focused, which it makes sense. I mean, she works on brains. So, uh, we're looking at, I think we've got things and organize, right? So that's going to be SI. She is very tribe centered. Like the whole deal with the way that she stopped her career for the kids and for the tribe is very much tribe. She showed a lot of movement. So that's going to give us ESJ, ESJ, ESFJ, and she is going to be direct. So that means that she will be an alternate, ESFJ alternate, FeSiTiNe. Just because she wants to hold the information for herself, and so that swaps those two into the introverted spot. But it does seem to be a fairly good fit. She's going to care about everyone else's feelings. She's going to gather everyone else's feelings almost without thinking about it, like just on an instinctual level. But then she's going to sort all of that into very specific boxes. And it's sensories, like it's the best ofs. And it is storing memories forever. And she does that through her timestamps with the tribe. The TINE instead of the NETI is going to mean that she's going to be very defensive over what she thinks. You can see that in the current situation with Jeopardy, right? And the whole CBD situation is because what I think should take precedent over everyone else's possibilities. Regardless of whether the host show is making money on this, what I think should take the precedence on this. She showed that through her midwifery stuff. Like, my way of raising children is better. She's very defensive about that. She was defensive a few times. And also, the FE, when she got embarrassed when talking about the slightly off-color things, that is very much an FE trait. She's very concerned. Like, she knows how other people are going to react instinctually. And so she's feeling their emotion instinctually. So she knows that that's going to get this response, and it brings the automatic flush. I think this was a pretty good fit. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up here. I hope that I have brought just a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of understanding in how I do this. This is my system that I developed. I didn't develop the entire system. I really just polished a couple of other systems, threw them together, and made it more efficient and to where it works in a logical manner. I hope that somebody takes this and runs with it. Like, that would be great. I do these videos to help me learn to type because this helps. I do this to help you learn to type because this helps. I have helped myself extensively through knowledge of this system. And through discovering how the system actually worked helped me a lot too. I hope that what a little bit of knowledge that I can impart here helps you as well. That's all I want. So, to the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, this has been Pitt's Take. Peace.